right now on Justice.
I am canceling the last administration's completely one-sided deal with Cuba.
President Trump just keeps on working.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and I were able to get Otto Warmbier back with his parents,
while the establishment bands together to take him down. Who's in on it? It's tonight's opening statement. Plus, tough talk from the Speaker.
Well, now we know the degree to which Joe is a prostitute.
I go one-on-one with Newt Gingrich, who has strong words for his critics and offers some critical advice for the president. Then,
it's First Amendment. It's freedom of speech. It is what it is.
I hit up people waiting online for Shakespeare in the Park, and I ask why they want to see a play where a President Trump look-alike is murdered on stage. If they did that to Hillary and stabbed her and all that, and she did win, would you be offended?
Yeah. Hillary is the bomb.
Oh, those liberal double standards. Justice starts now. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich and Congressman Ron DeSantis are on deck tonight, plus street justice from Shakespeare in the Park. But first, my opening statement. There's something that's not being talked about, and right now, it is the biggest danger to our country. A subtle plot by the GOP to help bring down the President of the United States and bring the establishment back into power. The belief, if done quickly enough, they'll still be in power and there'll be sufficient time to recover, to promote their favorite son as candidate for president in 2020. And the Democrats, whether you like them or not, are doing their job. They're fighting, they're resisting, and they're all on one page. Curious, other than Newt Gingrich, few, if any, Republican politicians vociferously supporting their president. Can you think of who in the Republican establishment is outraged at what is going on with their president? And whether Republicans agree with Donald Trump or not, that's their job. Now, I'm not convinced all Democrats necessarily believe the hogwash that they're spouting, but they're doing whatever's necessary to destroy Donald Trump. And they are in unison as the Republicans simply watch the Democrats railroad their president. So I ask myself, why? Why would Republicans lie down when they have the White House, the Senate, and the House? Curiously, it's the same question I asked during the run-up to the presidential election. So I say to myself, self, why would Republicans try to sabotage their own frontrunner and risk a Democrat winning the White House? And I keep coming up with the same answer. The Republican establishment, elected officials, and party leaders are in bed with the Democrats. So if Hillary wins, nothing's lost for them. It's business as usual. Business as usual. How sweet it is. The Republican establishment not fighting for their commander-in-chief as day after day they watch him being savaged, forcing him to defend himself and run the country. Think about it. If he's knocked out, the succession is clear and things go back to the way they were. No? Then where was the outrage when Kathy Griffin proudly holds the bloody decapitated head of the president? Where is the outrage against Shakespeare in the Park where a Donald Trump look-alike is beaten, kicked, and stabbed to death? Where was the outrage as the left silenced the right, whether it be at an academic setting like Berkeley or a ballpark in Virginia? Instead, the establishment politicians agree to play ball, a metaphor for exactly what is going on in Washington. Where's the outrage as the left colludes with the press? When people like Jim Comey leak federal records to the New York Times to get special counsel and wins? He not only wins, he gets a dear friend, a literal comrade in arms during the Bush administration to do the deed. The special counsel is supposed to assess Comey's credibility versus the president's credibility. Would you say that's a conflict? Would you say that's an automatic disqualification, given their personal and political relationship? And Mueller, he keeps appointing people who not only support Democrats, but dig deep in their pockets to give to the Democrats. One actually worked for the Clinton Foundation. You don't think these people have an agenda? Hey, listen up, Republicans. You're the ones in power. Where's the investigation of Bill Clinton, the husband of a target of an active criminal investigation, meeting with the Attorney General and Loretta Lynch just days before her scheduled meeting with the FBI? And days after that, the target, Hillary, comes out and says, I'll keep Loretta Lynch as Attorney General. Talk about in-your-face pay-to-play. Put Loretta Lynch under oath and find out why no grand jury was even impaneled regarding our classified documents. Possible subversion of our democracy? There's corroboration that Bill Clinton wanted to quash Hillary's investigation. Certainly a hell of a lot more than there is to this pathetic, we're going to find collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. Where's the investigation of the Clinton Foundation, an organized criminal enterprise parading as a 501c3 charity? Rumors that it paid for Chelsea Clinton's wedding and her apartment. A hell of a lot more than the hope of finding collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. You want to talk Russia? Let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about the sale of 20% of our uranium to Russia and Hillary Clinton signing off on the deal. The Clinton Foundation, that slush fund for Hillary, receiving $140 million, and Bill Clinton getting more than twice or triple his normal speech fee. You're empowered, damn it. Do something. Pass something. Cut this kumbaya crap. Put on your big boy pants and act like you're in power. Act like you give a damn. And more importantly, convince us that you're not in on the effort to take down the President of the United States. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now, Congressman Ron DeSantis, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Hello, Ron.
Hi, Judge.
All right. Congressman, I'm sorry. So, am I wrong?
Well, Judge, I got to tell you, if you look at what's been going on in the Congress with this Russia investigation, look, if you want to look at what Russia is up to, fine. But as you pointed out, this has been going on for months and months, and there's no evidence of any type of quote-unquote collusion. There's no reason why there would have been any collusion, and there's been more subpoenas issued by the Republican Congress for that investigation than there was for the Benghazi and Clinton Foundation matters combined. So I think we have to either put up or shut up, and if the committees still don't have any evidence of this, I think we can probably find better use of our time.
Well, you know what? You can impanel a grand jury on a moment's notice. I used to do it all the time. How about looking into some of the things where there's more than just the thought of criminality? The statute of limitations hasn't passed on a lot of the stuff that the Clintons did, and I don't understand. I don't understand why Republican elected officials are not fighting harder, not dragging Loretta Lynch in before a committee. And I know Trey Gowdy, by the way, Trey's going to be in charge of oversight and government reform. He's a former DA, former prosecutor. He's the best.
Well, Loretta Lynch, even Dianne Feinstein, who's a liberal Democrat from California, has said this is very troubling. So we absolutely need to do that. And it's frustrating because there was no special counsel appointed for the Clinton email case when Bill Clinton's meeting with Loretta Lynch. They're talking about keeping her on as Attorney General, as you pointed out. And yet we have a special counsel for the Russia matter where there wasn't even a crime identified, and the special counsel regulations require that there's a crime identified.
And collusion is not a crime. But you know what? I want to move on. Listen, Ron, you had a rough week. You were at that ball game. You spoke to the shooter. Talk to me.
Well, Judge, this is a guy that came up to me and Jeff Duncan from South Carolina. We just found out that the shooter had a list of names in his pocket, and Jeff Duncan was on that list. And so that was chilling when we found that out. But he wanted to know whether there was Republicans or Democrats out there. Jeff told him that's the Republican team, and he immediately proceeded to walk towards the field, and obviously 5 minutes later began to shoot. But this is a guy who he absolutely appreciated what he was asking us. He responded. And so I think he was unhinged in a political sense. He was filled with rage politically. But I think he was out at that ballpark for the exact reason that he wanted to kill as many Republicans as he could.
You know what's interesting is, people are satisfied, the left especially, to say the guy's crazy. I've tried enough murder cases to know that crazy, it seems that based on what you're telling me, that the guy was focused, he had an agenda, he was connected to reality. Would you say that?
Yeah, look, he had a very left-wing ideology. And I think that in some way is politically crazy, but in a legal sense, that ideology was driving him to attempt a mass murder. And so it's not that this is just some nut. And I would note, he was on Facebook in that Terminate Republicans Facebook group. And after the shooting, one of the members of that group posted a graphic that said, 1, 2, 3 shots you're out at the old ball game with an exclamation point, and there were other members of the group that were liking that on Facebook. So his views were ones that were shared in that group, and there were even members of that group that approved of what he did.
So you believe that the list of the other congressmen that he had, that the shooter had, was a kill list?
To me, that's the most reasonable inference given everything else we know about it. And given this guy's views, given that he was interested in confirming that there were Republicans on that field, and I talked to Congressman Duncan about it, and he's just like, man, if the shooter had his pistol on him when he walked up to our vehicle, he could have taken out Jeff, who was in the front seat. He could have taken out Jeff's staffer, Thomas, who was driving. And he could have taken out me in the back seat. It would have taken him a few seconds to do that.
All right, Ron, let me ask you a personal question. Do you feel the need to at least carry if we don't have the ability to provide protection to you?
Well, I think this is a situation where you had so many congressmen, 10 to 15 out there in one spot. I think those situations we may have to look a little bit different at, but at the end of the day, I don't want congressmen to be in a bubble. I think that we have to interact with people. We're representatives, and I hope as a society, the people like Hodgkinson and their loony behavior, that we're identifying those individuals and doing something about it before it gets to this point.
Well, Congressman DeSantis, I certainly hope that we can identify them. I doubt that we'll be able to. And I think we have to recognize where his hate stems from. It's a left-wing ideology. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And earlier, I spoke with former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich about the Mueller investigation and why he agrees with President Trump that it's clearly a witch hunt. Take a look. Mr. Speaker, thanks for joining us again on Justice.
It's always great to be with you.
Thank you. All right. So the Washington Post on Thursday morning says Trump's actions are now the focus of the special counselor Mueller. And based on anonymous resources, they say that our president is under investigation. Now, what's interesting is that late that same day on Thursday, Rod Rosenstein says we have to exercise caution in assessing the veracity of some of these stories. And the FBI and the Justice Department doesn't confirm or deny the truthfulness of the stories like this. That kind of tells me that maybe Rosenstein is saying, don't be so sure he's under investigation. What does it tell you?
Well, it doesn't tell me anything. If he's not under investigation, why can't Rosenstein say it? This whole, here we are back to where Comey was.
Exactly.
Apparently, over and over again, Trump has told privately, you're not under investigation, but nobody will officially admit it. So the news, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN can all go about smearing the president and using anonymous sources who are ostensibly government officials.
Okay, but what is amazing to me is I'm not really sure whether the president is under investigation. We've got anonymous sources. Then we have the head of the Justice Department, for all intents and purposes, seeing as a recusal of the Attorney General. And then the president comes out and he says on Friday morning, he says, I'm being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. So that, in a sense, if you're reading the tea leaves, says, he says he's under investigation, but then we just heard a report which says he wasn't confirming or denying that he's under investigation. Why is this going on in Washington?
Because they hate Trump. It's not. This is not a complicated story. On election night at 8 o'clock, everybody on the left thought they were about to elect Hillary. She was going to finish off the job that Obama started. They were going to use the power of government to finish radicalizing America. They were all happy. At 11 o'clock that night, they realized that their worst nightmare came true. She didn't lose to some nice, pleasant, mild establishment Republican. She lost to Donald J. Trump, and Donald J. Trump represents the end of their world. Remember, Judge, 97% of the people at Justice who donated donated to Hillary Clinton. 97-3. Guess what that culture's like?
Yeah, I get that. But, you know, as you look at this, you say, okay, Jim Comey testifies that when he left the FBI, the president was not under investigation. All right, that we get from him under oath. Then he says he leaks information so we can get a special counsel. We get the special counsel. Now there are leaks that the president is under investigation. That tells me that Mueller's operation is no better than Comey's, and that there are leaks, assuming they're even true. And then what's even worse is that Mueller and Jim Comey are like this. They always have been. How can we have a special counsel who is assessing the credibility of the two major witnesses right now, Comey versus Trump, who is pals with Jim Comey?
Well, look, to the degree that Comey's involved, Mueller, in theory, should recuse himself. The rules of justice are very simple. You cannot be investigating somebody who you are a personal friend of. And that's why this whole thing is so absurd.
Right.
Remember, by the way, Comey's past experience under Bush, when Comey appointed the godfather to his children to be a special investigator in the Valerie Plame case, knowing that there was no crime and knowing who had leaked, and they let loose Fitzgerald for the purpose of going after Dick Cheney. You know, I think that this whole thing is sick, and we ought to understand how sick it is. And if you look at who Mueller's hiring, it gets even sicker.
And that's not all. The speaker gets tough on his critics. Hear who he likened to a prostitute. Coming up a little later. And next, Amy Holmes is here live. We'll talk more about the people trying to take down the president and what he has to do to survive. And later, street justice gets some culture. I head to the theater to ask why a President Trump lookalike being stabbed to death is appropriate for Shakespeare in the Park. Justice rolls on in a moment. You don't have a problem with them depicting Donald Trump lookalike?
No, I think they always try to push the envelope a little bit, and that's what they're doing.
Developing tonight, a disturbing rise in vicious liberal rhetoric since President Trump has been in office. Even the horrific shooting this week at the congressional baseball practice being linked to a shooter who expressed his angry partisan politics. Joining me now with more, Rasmussen Reports political analyst Amy Holmes. All right, Amy, good to have you here on Justice.
Pleasure to join you, Judge.
Oh, thank you. Listen, the rise in the violence on the left, is this something that is exacerbated in recent times, or is this something that we've been watching?
Well, I think we've been watching it grow. If you remember the Occupy Wall Street protesters, they were engaged in some serious vandalism. But at the time, the mainstream media, their allies in the Democratic Party, they tolerated it because they thought it was leading to the same ideological end. And you know that Bernie Sanders, of course, got all of that support among young people using Occupy language. But Occupy in many different areas around the country was a very violent movement. It was not just a peaceful protest. But that was an attack on property. Now we're seeing an attack on life and liberty.
But you know what's interesting is that with Occupy Wall Street and now as we move toward more violence on the left, the left always criticized the Tea Party.
Right.
And they were violent and they were rednecks and they were rebels. I can't think of one thing that a Tea Party member did, I think, once they called someone a name. Other than that.
Right. And if you remember in the campaign, there was so much rhetoric. Oh, Donald Trump is using this very heated, hot, passionate rhetoric that could lead to, well, what we're finding out is actually the violence that we're experiencing is on the left. And I think a part of that, Judge, is because of this entrenched mindset that the November election was illegitimate. There's been this idea on the left from the day that Donald Trump was elected that they're going to try to get him out of office by every means necessary. So for those people who are on the fringes, you know, emotionally or psychologically, they hear this constant drumbeat that Donald Trump is not our legitimate president, that he is a mortal danger, and, you know, if you want to get rid of evil, well, they think that they're going to eradicate
almost
it.
like you're being an American, you know,
Right.
an American hero if you take him down.
Right, and, you know, Judge, there's you know, when you think that your opposition is not merely wrong, but evil, wouldn't that then inspire you to eradicate that evil?
But you know
We've
what
lost
I think
the
is
ability
so,
to compromise and talk.
What's so interesting to me, Amy, is the fact that, you know, they all come out and say, even though this guy hated Donald Trump, we know he did. He had an agenda. He used to march against Donald Trump.
He had a hit list.
I call it a kill list.
Yes.
Some people on the left are saying, well, maybe he wanted to have a meeting with these congressmen. No, he didn't.
Like, who is saying that this is absurd? And if anything, when I've been thinking about this, he hoped that the body count would be higher. And I don't know if he knew that there was going to be Capitol Hill police firing back. He might have thought that he was going to survive this massacre and go on and commit more. We don't know.
When they liken him to Jared Loughner was
Absurd
a paranoid schizophrenic.
Yes.
This guy is a focused, determined, he's got an end in sight.
Yes.
He hates Republicans, corroborated by the culture that are allowed to hate Republicans.
Right, and you know, Judge, you know more about this than I do, but we saw that there was premeditation and planning. He knew that there was going to be baseball practice at that baseball field at 7 in the morning. This is not someone who was hearing, you know, voices in his head and thought aliens were directing him to do this. He had a hit list, and he committed political assassination. That's what we know about this man. And we also know that his neighbors called him some fairly harsh language, that he was an angry little bleep. I'll just leave it at that.
You know, what's interesting to me is that all of those Congress people who were there, I mean, they have seen, you know, the face of death, I'm sure, closer than ever before in their lives.
Right.
And I wonder if, in spite of this kumbaya, we're all going to come together, I wonder if they're going to be even less vocal in their support of what they believe in for fear that they're going to be victims. So as the left becomes more empowered, the right becomes more silenced.
Goodness, Judge, I hope not. And I hope that there are people both in political office and in public life and private life that are willing to stand up. My cousin is a student at Evergreen State College, and she regards herself as a liberal, and she very bravely signed an open letter against all of this vitriol and bullying and viciousness that she's seeing happening on her campus. And I have to say, I'm very proud of her.
Well, unfortunately, there are not many college students who feel that comfortable doing that. But anyway, I want to thank you, Amy, for being with us. We look forward to having you back on Justice.
Thanks so much.
And street justice is still ahead, plus part 2 of my interview with Newt Gingrich. Hear his advice for President Trump about tweeting. But next, Donald Trump, Shakespeare, liberal takedowns. We'll get into all of it with our panel. Matt Schlapp and Chris Hahn on deck as justice rolls on. Welcome back to Justice. Another big week of news and politics, which means a lot to talk about with my panel. So let's get right to it. Joining me now, ACU, American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp, and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, syndicated radio host Chris Hahn. All right, guys, I want to stay with the topic a little bit. I am very concerned about the acceptance of the violent rhetoric on the left. Chris, please tell me that you are as well.
I don't like violent rhetoric at all, Judge. I didn't like it when it was aimed at President Obama. I don't like it when it's aimed at President Trump. We could disagree and vehemently be opposed to each other and do it in a civil way. I often argue with you guys. I've been arguing with you for 8 years, Judge, but I love you. Same thing with you, Matt.
You love Matt too? All right,
Of
Matt.
course, I love everybody. A lot of love in my heart.
He loves me
But you
because
know
he
what?
thinks I'm with the ACLU, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, but
You are. I just.
all right, guys. Here's my concern, Matt. My concern is that, everybody's talking the big game right now. And I'm not going to say, is it going to last? Because everybody's got an opinion. Yes, no, it doesn't matter. But my concern is this. As the right is being silenced in ways that we are unfamiliar with, from the burning of a building or an attempt to at Berkeley, from a police stand down and no arrests made there, to the Kathy Griffin, to all this craziness, where do you think this ends?
I think that the culture is in a really bad spot. I think that we've lost the ability to have respectful discourse. I'm going to say something that's not going to surprise a lot of people. I think it's a bigger problem on the left. I think that they think that Donald Trump is an illegitimate president. I think they think that there's no boundaries for people once they call them haters. And I think it really needs to stop. One rodeo clown had an Obama reference in his costume, and there was a nationwide outpouring. He had to stop. That wasn't even about murdering or death
Gee, I
or
remember
blood.
that.
Any kind of making fun of any Democrat is immediately stopped. But the left has got to stop this, Chris, and you need to call them out.
Chris, you disagree?
Matt. Well, Matt, I know that Matt was alive for the last 8 years. I debated him on this show a lot during the last 8 years. There was a lot of vitriol on the right. And now the left is kind of taking it a little bit too, not from you, but it was out there, Matt.
Chris, stop. Give me an example. Give me an example of the right being as outrageous as the left holding a decapitated head of the president. Stephen Colbert is saying the president is a CO whatever holster for Putin. Give me an example of the Democrats doing stuff like that.
Shakespeare. Wait a minute. The Motor City madman saying he wanted to take a gun to the president of the United States, and he was visiting this president of the United States in the White House. So let's not forget about Ted Nugent, who's been on this show right before me sometimes. Saying some very outrageous things.
Yeah,
he's apologized.
And
he said he's not going to do that anymore.
And so is a lot of other people. Let's not forget what happened the last 8 years. And as for this Shakespeare thing, look.
I don't want to forget what's happened the last 8 years. That's why Donald Trump's the president. Go ahead, Matt.
And Kathy Griffin did not apologize. Kathy Griffin believes that she's a victim. She's turned it into a publicity stunt. Let's just say this. The country should not be having this type of rhetoric where we can't respect each other across lines. Chris, you and I can do it.
I agree.
That's not all I want is for the violence to stop. All I want is for people to not think that they're going to be a hero if they kill a congressman or a president.
Judge, you get no argument from me about that. I spent 2 hours on my radio show talking about it this week. It is horrible that anybody would think that violence solves anything. And, to the point of that play, Julius Caesar, that's the point of that play, that violence doesn't solve anything. In 1789, when they performed that play, Julius Caesar looked a whole lot like George Washington. It's the way that play gets performed when it's modernized. It's not pretty, but it goes to the point that violence doesn't solve anything, especially political violence.
So George Washington, Chris, was modernized as Julius Caesar? Is that what you're saying?
I wasn't alive
so it took 200 years to get to Trump. They skipped over everybody else.
What I'm trying to say, Judge, is that almost every president, including Obama, has been portrayed as Julius Caesar in a production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. It's widely been reported that there was an Obama impersonator in Minnesota at a major theater doing this during his term in office.
Boy, Minnesota, that's a big audience. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think let's go back to this again. We have to call out when the rhetoric is too hot. The fact is,
we do call out, and they say free speech.
Yes. That's it. Look, I'm okay with free speech, but you have to have the responsibility for what you say. I don't want it to be criminal to say these things, but you have to take responsibility. And these left-wing hotheads who are encouraging these people across the country to take these violent steps by the rhetoric, it has a bad consequence. And they have to take responsibility.
Doesn't have any consequence. Go ahead, Chris.
Of the three of us on this panel, I'm the only progressive that is here in the conservative medium, and I get attacked on Twitter in ways that would turn your stomach. by people on the right. So let's just cool it right now about what's happening
not
from the
the
left.
same
It happens on
thing.
all.
I
And
get
it's by the way,
trash too.
it is
Deal
not the
with
same
it. You're a
thing.
it is
Republican guy.
absolutely. It is absolutely wrong for it to happen. I agree with you. We should stop with the violent, tempered
Okay.
rhetoric.
But there's
like
nothing-
I said, I got a lot
there-
of respect for the people I
there's
debate here on
nothing
Fox,
like
and I think you
this
have
in the
respect for
age
me.
of
We've got
Trump.
to respect each other.
There's nothing like this that we've seen in the age of Trump. This complete disrespect and disregard and the laughter about these disgusting violent acts, and it has to stop. There should be respect for
Nobody's
our public officials.
laughing.
People were almost killed because people's rhetoric is out of control.
Well, Congressman Ron
Nobody is
DeSantis
laughing.
was on earlier, and he talked about how they're saying one down, X number to go, and people, liking it on Facebook and on websites. It's a bad
There
situation.
are idiots everywhere.
There are idiots and
There are
criminals
idiots and
everywhere.
Yeah, there are, Judge. We know that. And there are trolls on the internet that say things that they would never say to your face.
Yeah. All right. Come on, Matt, I'll give you the last word.
I think we can do better than this. I think it was a horrible week for the country. And I'm hoping that all of our elected officials can lead us better, be responsible, and all of us who are on TV can make sure that we're talking about solutions to this for this country.
Okay, but
because
we're
we are in
not.
deep
Fast. I got 5 seconds. Chris, should congressmen be able to carry guns? And women?
I think that
That's a yes or
I
no.
think that if they're properly licensed and insured, yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. The three of us agree.
Licensed and insured.
Matt
Yeah, hey, look,
Slab,
see
Chris
that?
Hahn, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Judge.
And Newt Gingrich with some tough talk for his critics and some interesting advice for the president. Part 2 of my interview next.